Hey, folks, today is that day. Not only is it Dr. King Day, folks, it is National Championship Day. And today we're going to talk about Notre Dame versus Ohio State for the Natty. All right, so talk a little bit about the playoffs in general because I haven't talked a lot. We'll talk about the road that these two teams took to get here because I haven't talked a lot about college football too much recently. So let's talk about the road that these two teams took to get here. I'm going to share this out. Um, National championship game here. So let's go to the college football playoffs and see where the road these two teams took. So let's start off with Ohio State beat Texas in their first one. They didn't beat Texas in their first game. In the first game, they actually beat. Let me get this here. I'm a little bit discombobulated here. Obviously, they beat Tennessee in the first game, 42-17. A game that, to be honest with you, I thought was a 50-50 game that could have went either way. But you look at the Buckeyes season. The Buckeyes, of course, lost that game to Michigan at the end of the year, 13-10. And going into that game, I think we all thought, Ryan Day would get over the hump of losing to Michigan because Michigan wasn't all that good. They finished really good, though. They beat Ohio State and they beat Alabama in the bowl. So great finish for Shamon Moore, but not an overall great season. Of course, all the pressure mounted on Ryan Day, and everyone's saying if Ryan Day doesn't make a national championship run, he's going to be fired, which I thought was crazy anyway. If he would have went out in the first round blown out by Tennessee, then maybe you could make an argument for it. But Ryan Day has a great overall coaching record, so I didn't think the man needed to be fired any way you look at it, but that's just me. He had a great overall record, still does, but this team, they go in, they wipe Tennessee off the board. They wipe Oregon out as well. Number one team in the country, undefeated, all that stuff. Beat them during the year by a point. Wipe them out, 41-21. And then they get the Longhorns of Texas. And I don't think we really talked about this game. They beat Texas 28-14, scored 14 in the fourth quarter to pull away. Quinn Ewers, of course, had the fumble that was returned by his former roommate when he was at Ohio State for the long touchdown that sealed the deal. Will Howard played well, 24-33, 289, one touchdown, one interception. Many people thought Will Howard was the weak link with Ohio State, and I thought he's played very, very well in this run in the playoffs. So he's not been the weak link by any means. But Ohio State, they got so many really good receivers. They got two really good running backs. They're just a loaded, stacked roster when you look at them. And in that game against Texas, they didn't run the ball all that great, 24 times, 81 yards. But, again, you got multiple really good receivers. You got a guy like Cornell Tate, 7 catches, 87 yards. Of course, Henderson caught the 75-yard touchdown. You got Azubuike, 51 yards on 5 catches. You got Scott. You got Judkins, who's a phenomenal receiver, and he only caught 3 balls for 22 yards in that game. So they are indeed loaded at the receiver position. I saw that game sort of going the way it did. I expected Texas to be in it, keep it close, but thought the Buckeyes were just a better team, especially after they beat Oregon and they dominated Tennessee. I thought they were just better. Texas, to me, they had holes in their team all year. They played sort of a weak SEC schedule. I know the SEC is really strong, but they played a weak SEC schedule. Didn't play all of the best teams besides Georgia, and they lost 2 games to Georgia. So Ohio State, to me, looks like the team to beat. This is a team that I look at right here, and I say that the Buckeyes are the favorite. They're the team to beat for a reason, but I'm going to dig a little bit into it a little more, and I'm going to give you the pick. I don't want to spoil the pick because the pick's coming up in a few minutes. On the season, Will Howard, 3,779 yards passing, 33 touchdowns, 10 interceptions. I mentioned the two-head monster at running back, Judkins, 960 yards rushing. Henderson, 967 yards rushing. I mentioned all the really good receivers. Smith, 1,227 yards. Azubuike, 747 yards. Tate, 698. Henderson, 284. Scott, 249. Just really good receiver after really good receiver. I think I mentioned that Judkins was a receiver a minute ago. He's a running back. I misspoke. But yeah, he's phenomenal at catching the ball out of the backfield as well. They also have some solid tight ends on that team. So I really like this Buckeye team. Offensively, they're playing really well. They're loaded on offense. So when you look at this matchup, it's sort of a juxtaposition because, yes, they are great on offense. The team they're going against, the Notre Dame Fighting Irish, on the other hand, they're good on offense, but they are great on defense. And Notre Dame's an 8.5 point underdog here to the Buckeyes. Win probability here gives Ohio State a 55.3% chance to win this game. So I want to take a second now and talk about Notre Dame's road to the national championship game. And let's be realistic here. Their road here was sort of a every game elimination deal after the second week of the season when they lost to Northern Illinois. Because once they lost that game, they had no more room for error. With 2 losses, not being in the conference, they would not make the playoffs. They had to win every game after Northern Illinois. They walloped a terrible Purdue team. They were dominant against Miami of Ohio. They had a little hiccup, a little struggle, but against a good Louisville team, they pulled it out. Louisville's pretty solid. They embarrassed Stanford. They beat Georgia Tech solidly, who finished the year in the top 25, I do believe. They blew out a Navy team that came in undefeated at the time and ranked. They embarrassed the Florida State team, which embarrassed themselves all year. They beat Virginia handily. They embarrassed a good Army team who actually came in as well in the top 25 and undefeated. And they had some competition from USC, but they took care of USC pretty handily. So they went into the playoff with a 10-point win against a good Indiana team. Say what you want about Indiana. They lost 2 games, and those 2 losses came to the 2 teams that are playing tonight. So Indiana, that was a really good football team. Take a 10-point win against a team like Indiana and be happy. They also pulled out a 23-10 win against the Georgia Bulldogs. Some people like to say backup quarterback. I don't think it mattered because, let's be honest, Georgia probably doesn't even beat Texas and win the SEC if they didn't go to the backup quarterback due to injury because their starter wasn't looking too good. So, yeah, I feel like Georgia minus a quarterback that wasn't playing good. So, and then you go in and you beat Penn State in a really good game. I want to talk about that one for a second. That was a really good football game. I was on vacation during that game. Didn't really get to see a lot, but followed it on my phone. I was in San Francisco. Riley Leonard played really good. He threw 2 interceptions. So, I mean, I don't really want to say he played really good, but he played solid, though. I mean, he's always a guy that can get you yards on the ground, makes big throws. Drew Aller made a big interception, only had 135 yards passing for Penn State. Ran the ball pretty well. Singleton had 3 touchdowns for them. But at the end of the day, Notre Dame's defense made plays that had to be made, and they've made plays that had to be made all year on that defensive unit. I really enjoy watching Notre Dame defense. It's like I enjoy watching Ohio State's offense. They got some guys out there on that defense like Don Schuler, like Bowen, like Watts. I mean, these guys can play. Osbury, Sneed. They got a lot of really good players out there on that defense. So they go fly around. They make a lot of plays. They force turnovers. They do a lot of things well. One of the best defensive units in the country. I want to kind of dig into the stats here and see if the stats actually show that. I want to look into college football's defensive leaders by teams, because I'm pretty sure, excuse me if I have a hard time finding this, I'm pretty sure Notre Dame would be highly on that list. This is by players right here. Let's see, by teams. Okay, here we go. Team statistics on defense. So nationally, Notre Dame actually points allowed. I actually didn't know this. These 2 teams are 1 and 2 in points allowed. I didn't even know that. Ohio State's number 1 in defense in points allowed. I knew Notre Dame was really high, 14.3, number 2 in the nation. Number 1 is actually Ohio State. I did not know that. I just learned something new. Yards allowed, Ohio State's number 1 in the country, allowing only 251 yards per game. So again, Learn something new. Ohio State's number 3 in sacks with 51. So for all the talent that they got on offense, the defense has been just as good this year. Yards allowed per game, Notre Dame's a little further down, but still top 10. They're number 6, 8, 9, number 9, 298 yards a game. Ohio State's number 1. So just looking at those numbers, you kind of expect this to be I'm not going to say a low-scoring game because I think these two teams will both make big plays. I think both defenses will play really well in this game, and I think both teams will make big plays here and big plays there. I'm looking for Ohio State's offensive statistics. They're actually number 4 in offense in the Big Ten, which is a little surprising. I actually thought they would have been higher on that list of offense, averaging 428 yards per game. So I have to go down to Independence to see Notre Dame. Notre Dame averages 404 yards a game, 405.1. So about 20 so more yards a game. So you're looking at the matchup. Ohio State averages more yards on offense, and they average giving up less yards on defense, which I didn't think was true, but it is. So interesting game. The keys of this game is going to be mistakes and big plays. Don't make the mistakes. Don't make the mistakes and limit the other team's big plays. I can see this game going in the direction of Ohio State getting a dub here. I'm going to say something like 23-14 or 23-17. I think Notre Dame keeps it close. The point spread's 8.5. Just go ahead and give me the Irish on the 8.5. I expect them to keep it closer, but I think Ohio State's just a little bit better than Notre Dame. They're a more talented team. They're a little better on offense, and apparently they're a little better on defense, which I didn't think. So we're going to go ahead and take Ohio State, take Notre Dame on the point spread. So excited about this game tonight. It's going to be a good one. So tune in. It's coming up in just less than 2 hours. So there'll be some national championship football. In my next video, I will talk about the NFL playoffs, the conference finals. I will break down the games that just ended in the NFL on divisional round weekend. So as always, remember, it's peace in sports, and I'll see y'all later.